Hi and welcome back. Today I'm working on a colonial piece of hardware that's called a shutter dog. It's basically just a rotating bracket that's designed to keep window shutters open. So these shutter dogs would get mounted on either side of a window and they would prevent a wind gust from blowing the shutter closed. The dog rotates around so you can open the shutter and get it in place, and then it's held back by the top half. The lower half is heavier than the top, so it always stays in a vertical position. I'm going to be making both halves of this shutter dog with a 3/8 inch square bar. I'm going to start by rough forging the pivot pin for the shutter dog. I'm just going to hammer out the pin and rough out the shoulder and refine it a little bit with a file. You don't need a well-defined shoulder for this to work, and this is quite commonly how they were done. You do see some obviously that look like they were turned on a lathe, but a lot of the country blacksmith made shutter dogs were just hammered out. So I'm a little bit further along here and I have the pin diameter that I want to use, and you can see how I have just a basic sloping shoulder that's going from the main bar to the pin. So to create a little bit of a shoulder, I'm just going to pick a spot a little bit uphill from the pin and I'm just going to start cutting in a square line. I'm not going to file all the way back to the bar. I'm just going to create a little bit of a shoulder there and refine the shape of the pin. I'm just going to slowly work my way around and make the pin as consistent as I can. I'm not going to worry too much about the pin being perfectly centered in the bar. Again, this isn't a picket for a railing that's going to be visible. It's just a functional piece of machinery. And, you know, when you think about shutter dogs and the hinges for the shutters and the hinges for the doors, the nails, you know, all the other brackets and hardware that was needed in a house, you can understand how they really didn't spend a lot of time refining this detail. Now I'm ready to start forging the actual working part of the shutter dog. These come in all shapes and sizes, and it was an area where the blacksmiths, you know, did like to show off a little bit. So if you had a little bit more technical skill, you would see shutter dogs that were a little bit more elaborate. But this one is just a pretty standard shape. Now I'm ready to start forging the bottom half of the shutter dog, and you'll notice that I'm leaving a little bit of material in between the top and the bottom half. That full cross section of the bar is going to be used later on to create the pivot point for the shutter dog. I'm going to be using a cross peen later to shape that section, but I don't want to do it right now because it's going to get in the way of the work that I'm doing. So there's nothing too complicated about what I'm doing here. I'm just going to create a long gradual taper and then I'm going to curl that up into a scroll. Now that I have all the forging done on the lower half, I can refine that pivot area. And to finish the shaping of the dog, I'm just going to freehand a scroll. And they don't always come out just the way you want them, so the final step is always to just take some scrolling tongs and make the little fine adjustments that are needed. I like this bent leg design because you can see the whole scroll as you're working on it. Now I'm ready to rivet the two pieces together. When you're cutting a rivet to length, you have to take into account the thickness of the material that you're going to be riveting. Here I can assemble the two pieces, so beyond the front face of the shutter dog, I'm leaving a length that is just a little bit more than the diameter of the pin. And as always, I'm using a very light hammer, and I'm just working my way around the whole head of the rivet in a very systematic manner. I'm starting by upsetting the rivet slightly, and then I'm beveling my hammer so that I'm rounding over the edges of the rivet, and then I go back to the center to spread the rivet head out a little bit more, and then I go back to bevel those edges until I start creating that dome shape. And then I just continue that process and follow that dome shape around to complete the head of the rivet. If the rivet head clamps down on the shutter dog a little bit too much and it doesn't spin freely, all you need to do is just stick it back in the fire and get it to a red heat and then spin it around. It'll work itself free. Hi, I'm Dennis, and thanks for watching. If you have questions and you want to contact me directly, you can do so by emailing me at either one of the addresses that I have listed here. It may take me a couple of days, but I will get back to you. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.